meet you. And I know your time is very valuable in this program, so if anyone has to bolt out during the middle of this, no problem. I won't take offense. And I think those who have class with me in one, it's just Dr. Locke, so if you show up a little. All right, and of course, thank you to SGA for this opportunity. When I first heard about it, I was quite excited because it incorporated two things I love: public speaking, I know it's kind of weird, and this topic today, and we'll get into what that is. And also, I love having a captive audience, because if you know me personally, I'm a rather quiet guy, but when I get up here, you might have to kind of yank me off stage. So, I put this in for dramatic effect because it kind of puts us in the mood of the 1950s, 40s, and even prior. And we'll get into what this is in a minute, even the comic here. So why is this topic so important about the history of nutrition? Obvious reason for our health, right? We know we have to eat well, and nutrition is important. But there's one that one might not see if they don't look too deeply, and that's the fact of, this is often misattributed quote, if you don't learn your history, you're doomed to repeat it, right? We know that can be applied to many things, and we'll see how that's applied here in this presentation as we go along. And is anyone familiar with the book, The Gulag Archipelago, from Alexander Solzhenitsyn? Should be required reading. It's about the communist Soviet Union. And it's a really large book. But why is that important with nutrition? And that's because in his book he describes how the communists, or how just simple groups, can infiltrate the most minute of social fabrics, and even education and medicine. And in the book he also details how they often start with nutrition, keeping the food from individuals. So it's something to be observed, especially in today's climate, to keep an eye out for. So, malnutrition, we typically think of malnutrition as like a wasting child, right? We see the commercials of African children that are starving and want you to donate money. But oftentimes, one might not think about this form of malnutrition, and it is the form, and that's the sort of what one might call the triad of obesity. And that's overweight, micronutrient deficiency, and non-communicable diseases like diabetes. Those often come as a triage. And we know that's very prevalent in the United States. And you might say, well, that person, they look like they have total access to food, but we often forget that we're a nation that's starving nutritionally. And we're a nation that overeats, but we're undernourished. So keep that in mind as we go along as well. And as perhaps one day as you practice, you might say, well, this person's getting all the caloric needs, met. But what's the quality of those calories? So was it always this way? This was a study called How the Mid-Victorians Worked, Ate, and Died. That was about from 1837 to 1901. What this basically said was that the Mid-Victorians ate twice the amount of calories that we did, and were still underweight, but they also had a perfect ratio of activity to those caloric intakes, so they were also much more active. And most importantly, they ate a whole food diet and very limited access to toxins such as tobacco smoke, pollution, etc. Interesting study. Again, we can learn from our history here. So why are we so unhealthy? Well, technology, of course, and one might see that as iPads, computers, we're sedentary far too much, but also we like to apply technology to everything, and even to study as nutrition. We create this sort of nutritional science, and oftentimes we're looking for this magic pill or vitamin. But what happens when we take the coca leaf that people drink in South America as a tea and no problem occurs, but yet when we synthesize it down, we get the drug cocaine. And we know that when we take it out of its whole complex, we start to see problems. So the same thing here with this technology of nutrition, with synthetic vitamins, things like that. And we've lost our relationship to food. No longer do we cook, we microwave, and purchase quickly. And then, of course, reductionist theory, as you're aware of in our culture, is common with how we look at science and overall life in general. And food is a complex, and so too are vitamins. We see beta-carotene on the back of a supplement, for instance. Is that really vitamin A, or is that what we label as vitamin A? You see, in a carrot, there's well over 1,000 constituents enveloped in the carrot, but yet we isolate the beta-carotene and say that's vitamin A. So what happens in the body when we try to utilize just that one piece? So that's important. So what led to this? What have we forgotten, or what has been covered up? A bit of a conspiracy theorist, I guess. So this is kind of the first start, I guess we could say, in the study of nutrition. Sir Robert McCarrison, British war veteran, he conducted his first studies of nutrition disease in India. He basically, this says that we're obsessed with the microbe, and oftentimes we forget that having sort of that host environment that's already healthy, when the microbe does enter, it will have no effect, or perhaps minimal. He did a study on an Indian diet, the Sikh, and the poorer class European. The rats on the left here is the Indian diet, the whole food traditional culture diet. Ones on the right. You may say, well, I love to be skinny, these rats look like they're a little healthier, but in fact, they're malnourished in that they didn't have the proper development of sexual organs, and the eyes and ears, you can see a little bit in this. And basically the European diet was processed foods, jams, processed meats, and the Sikh diet was whole grains, whole vegetables, meat with bone broth, things like that. Dr. Harvey Wiley, anyone? No, Dr. Harvey Wiley? Probably not, because he's really been covered up. He was the first head of the FDA. And why don't we know about this? Well, he left the FDA in 1912 because he couldn't enforce the laws that he wished to due to industry pressures. And he wrote the book, The Crime Against the Food Law, and that was in regards to the Pure Food and Drug Act, in which it defined adulterated and misbranded foods. Basically, Dr. Wiley had this study, and he took a lot of young gentlemen and he fed them boric acid and borax, all these preservatives they wanted to put in food. Back at that time, studies were a bit different. You could injure participants. They didn't end well. But anyway, it was replaced in 1938, and now we get the whole host of heavy metals and junk that we can have in our products. And Dr. Wiley's work perhaps was in vain. So here's some of his works. You can find these, and I'll give you that information at the end of this presentation online as PDF format. There's a great company out there who's working to preserve this work. There's a history of a crime against the food law. Very interesting read. I recommend it. And when I look at this, you might see typewriter, lots of stuff. When I look at this, I see heart. I see that all these gentlemen and individuals at one point went up against industry pressure, and they went up against, big corporations and companies and all that, because they saw what was going to happen. They saw the future of our health as a nation, and they worked tirelessly to, write to the president. This is a 10-page long paper to the president at the time. All in vain, unfortunately. Dr. Weston Price, perhaps you know him, right? He wrote Nutrition and Degeneration. He did a lot of research on traditional cultures and diet. Traveled the world looking for, don't tell me, sustainable vegetarian populations. Couldn't find one. Yeah, careful. I knew that was a dangerous topic. But, so he was the first person to investigate why traditional diets were healthy. In some tribes, 6 months of special feeding was required before marriage. That was due to the down the line possible birth of a child. And they understood how much nutrition was required for that. Just in time, I'm going to be skipping a couple slides. We've got a lot of stuff in here. So here we go. Here's a picture, and he took some pictures as he did his travels. We can see this is an African tribe population that was raised on their traditional foods and just gorgeous dental structure. And pay close attention to the jaw structure. They didn't have braces. They didn't have toothbrush, toothpaste, any of that. Just whole foods. And what he found was the jaw structure was able to grow appropriately in the womb as a fetus, and then all the teeth could fit in appropriately. And I'll show in a minute what most American individuals look like. This is after a second generation of introduction of British foods, processed foods. You can see the degradation carries here. Forgive me for saying this, but this individual is quite handsome. He's a Samoan, and just look at that. That's all from nutrition. Look at the structure of his teeth, his jawline and whatnot. Some of these individuals are quite old, very much in health. This is a third generation. We can see the narrowing of the face and the changing of the dental structure. On the left, we see one that's been introduced to processed foods of the New World, and one on the right that has had a traditional foods. You can see the nice rounded face, nice teeth. Here we go, and the Americans, the Swedes, the Europeans, and whatnot. We see this narrowing of the face and difficulty for all the teeth to sort of be contained within the mouth. And you know, this is a real problem today, and I'll get to it in a little bit on why it's a real problem with females, but also males as well. Hormonally, this is an issue, and the development of frame and whatnot. It's an interesting topic, and it kind of blurs the lines of some things going on today. So nourished populations ate sources of raw protein, basically all whole foods, use bone broth, no empty or processed foods, and they didn't have the displacing foods of modern commerce, is what Dr. Price coined it. And most importantly, too, they had a ratio of omega-6 and 3, it was a 1-to-1. Typically in America, we're 6-to-1 or 9-to-1 because of all the soy oils, things like that. This is a study that someone did. They were anthropologists looking at skulls in the river delta, and basically they threw out all skulls that they found dental caries on because they could not find a traditional skull that contained dental caries. They ate traditional diet. If they found a skull that contained the caries, they threw it out and could not say that it was a traditional culture, that it wasn't an old skull. And then Dr. Price wrote a lot more works. Here's my favorite. Bostonian, 1943, the fightin'est leader in the field of nutritional science, none other than Dr. Royal Lee, the founder of Standard Process. It's a little sound bite. He's got a really beautiful transatlantic type talk. I'll skip that for now because I don't know if we have sound. But basically what he said here to a group of MDs was, it's really awful that we are oftentimes focusing on treating something with a chemical over natural means or supporting the body itself, or sort of poisons over food, as he says. He was labeled the Einstein of nutrition, simply genius. He was a businessman, a farmer, educator. Most of all, though, going back to this heart nature, and that he was awarded a humanitarian award because, you know, he saw what a huge issue this could develop into, because it already was at the time. That was 50, 60 years ago. Think about, you know, if he was alive today, what he might encounter. And what this was is that he was in the crosshairs of some of the most powerful institutions in the country. There was actually an arsony at his place of business where he had lots of published works, and he was kind of keeping Dr. Price's work alive and whatnot. Lost a lot of that work in an arsony. Who knows how that started. Is anybody familiar with World War II? I didn't learn about it in high school, but it's rather important. You know, we had a tough time with the Japanese in the Pacific. They had kamikaze pilots and warplanes that at the time were a bit better than ours. They had trouble shooting them down as they came to attack our naval vessels. Well, Dr. Royal Lee said, you know, that's a problem. Maybe I should invent something. So he invented the speed governor, which is a gyroscopic sort of timing mechanism that went into the anti-air guns. And at that point, we were losing like 5 vessels a day. It went down to like 1, and it was just amazing. They were really, and no one really credited him with that. But he developed a speed governor that later went into the Norden bomb sight, and it cost the Navy to produce the old ones $3,800. Dr. Lee got that down to $3,250. In the Norden bomb site, you could drop a bomb and land it in a pickle barrel. That's what we dropped the bombs on a lot of the countries with. And at first in the war, we were having a lot of issues with targeting. Later on, dead on. Unfortunately, I guess you could say, the loss of some lives. He also went to dental school, but not to become a dentist. He was tired of some of the issues he was seeing in dental work, and that, you know, the drill was always on. So he said, why don't I become a dentist, and then I can understand how to develop a foot pedal. So now when you go to the dentist and he plays with the foot pedal, that's Dr. Lee's work. Also, when you're in chemistry lab, the lattice hardware on the organic chemist wall, Dr. Lee developed a better form of that hardware. So just one of those guys, right? He was also kind of credited with really the first understanding of autoimmunity, and he called that protomorphology. And in his supplements and whatnot, he utilizes PMG, or protomorphogen extracts of the nucleus of, let's say, bovine cells. So you have a heart problem. He oftentimes thought that there was a huge autoimmunity issue and that antigens built up around, let's say you had an MI and that heart was damaged. He believed there was an autoimmunity buildup there, and to get sort of flush that out and get rid of it, you could take a bovine extract of the nucleus of the heart glandulars, and that would really help out. And indeed it did. And oftentimes today, some scientists say we actually have autoimmunity a bit wrong, and Dr. Lee was more on the right page, because if you look into that, it's a little different. Here's an image of which one are males, which one are females, and this was a work that Dr. Lee did. And why this is important is because what I talked about earlier. Think about the amount of C-sections in the United States and why that might be. The development of the pelvic region of females in the United States is far smaller and more compact, so it's much harder to give birth to the infant. So why this is important is because it's our belief that the nutrition is the sort of foundation for the development of these structures, such as the pelvis. And also C-sections can be billed as insurance as surgery, so I know something to do well. And this goes back, and I'll just touch on this, the fact that, they looked at these rats and they wanted to give them vitamin B. And typically most vitamin Bs in our country are made of coal tar. I'm from Kentucky, coal's big industry there, and so is the supplement industry. Because B vitamins are made from coal tar, niacinamide, things like that, synthetic B vitamins. Whole B vitamins, such as that found abundantly in bovine liver, is much different. And in this study, they found that the swimming capacity of rats was far higher in the rats that were fed whole liver powder rather than the B complex. So be careful when you're buying vitamins and whatnot. What you get from GNC, mostly sawdust off the floor. So his legacy lives on. No promotion here from Standard Process, just love the company. If you can't beat them, join them philosophy. So we say that a lot of these guys' history has been covered up, and perhaps these industry pressures knew that there's no way I can go up against nutrition and just say, just eat all the Skittles you want, it's no problem. So why don't we join them, and why don't we make supplements? Okay, I'm Amazon, why don't I make a B vitamin? It's really full of junk, but I'm going to sell it to them because people are so sort of positioned to think, well, I probably should take a multivitamin or something. Oh, this one's the cheapest, let me take it. So there might be some strange currencies going on there. I visited Bastyr University, and this was on the wall. This is Dr. John Bastyr's medical bag. And right in the front there, I noticed, was Catalin. And that was Dr. Royal Lee's first multivitamin, was Catalin. And Dr. John Bastyr was using this. And Dr. Lee was based in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Other notable figures, I just added this in here in case I needed more time. And we know the Nobel Prize winner, Albert Szent-Györgyi, found ascorbic acid or vitamin C. He later went on to very specifically specify, I was wrong, vitamin C is not just ascorbic acid. It also contains vitamin P or rutin, which is extremely important for that. It's a cofactor for vitamin C to really work. He had a colleague that was suffering from an illness. He said, can I have some ascorbic acid? He said, I'm all out. So here's the paprika that I isolated it from. He got better. Then he got sick again. He said, give me some vitamin C. He sent him some ascorbic acid. Didn't get better, got worse. So he went on to later state that this complex idea is very important. Let's see. So where do we go from here? Just understanding, again, that our history is so important, understanding that what we may think are modern advancements in today's time had already been found 50, 60, 70 years ago. And that's why the history is so important. Oftentimes we just kind of take what's fed to us and we don't do the research, whether that be in politics or science. So I think that's quite important. And remember, those that don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Here's my works cited. The most important piece of that is Saline River Press. Go to that website. You'll find all of these great works in PDF format. So thank you very much. I'll open up to questions. I appreciate your attention. Thank you.